Here are 11 articles I recommend reading to get better at UX design and interface design. So the first two on this list come from the Lyft Design team, and this first article is about making decisions about which UI element to use for conveying a message to a user. And I love this article. I refer to it all the time in the UI classes I teach, and the process is as follows. You start by considering whether the message you want to give is informational or decisional. So are you just telling the user about something, or do you need them to make a decision? And then you follow the steps of this flowchart to work out which of these elements is best used. So this article tells you all about how to do it and why each element is best for each of those use cases. The second article on this list also comes from the Lyft Design team, and it's a similar format. It's a flowchart, and this time it's about segmented controls. So a segmented control, you see it a lot on iOS. It's kind of like a tab indicator, and this article takes you through all the different options for when you can use different types of segmented controls. So both of these articles are really short to read and a really good reference point. The next two articles on this list are from Smashing Magazine and are written by the amazing Vitaly Friedman. If you're not following him on social media, especially on LinkedIn, he posts these just incredible breakdowns with loads of sources. So I'd recommend giving him a follow so you can learn things while you're absent-mindedly scrolling. These articles are a bit longer, but they're super in-depth. So the first one I want to recommend is about writing good error messages. So this isn't just for forms, though forms is a really big part of it, but it's also about how to show error messages in line, in tables, in interactions that have failed or gone wrong, in filters if you're changing the filters of something and you need to show an error message. And he gives loads of great advice, like don't just rely on red colors alone, make sure the user has a way out of whatever they get stuck doing. I think error messages are one of those things that we don't really consciously design for very much. Often we'll design a flow, think about the happy path, send it over to a developer and call it quits. So I'd recommend reading this if you want to design good error messages. The second article of his, which is really good, and again is a bit of a mammoth read, but it's like encyclopedic, it's really, really useful to refer to, is all about mobile navigation patterns, and particularly for mobile websites. So often if you've got a big website, consider a massive retailer like Amazon or a big supermarket, and you've got loads and loads of categories, maybe you've got a mega menu, and you want to compress all of that onto a phone screen. We as designers often are designing on our massive Apple Studio displays, and we don't consider how much traffic is sent to mobile. And this is a thing I've been guilty of, and especially right now, I'm working on a project where over 90% of our traffic is mobile traffic. So it's really important to consider how to display large amounts of information in the most accessible way for using on a mobile device. So this article talks about accordions and links and this billboard pattern where you have the most commonly used things right at the top. It's a really good reference and I'd recommend checking it out. So the next group of articles come from Adam Silver. Adam Silver has worked on Just Eat, he's worked for the UK government and for the BBC, and he's absolutely obsessed with forms. He wrote a book on form design patterns, he sells a course on form design patterns, as well as a course on prototyping for gov.uk systems. And there are 3 articles which I really want to recommend to you to read on his blog. The first one is about tooltips. This article will take you about a minute to read, but basically it explains really clearly why tooltips aren't that good for forms. The next one is called Form Design from Zero to Hero all in one blog post. And this is, I would just treat this like a checklist. If you're ever designing a form, I would print out this article and systematically go through every point he makes and check that you're following all of the best practices that he provides. And then this last one is also super short, super quick to read, but a really, really interesting case study. There was this screenshot which was doing the rounds on Design Twitter a while back, and it shows how confusing the screen on your iPhone is if you get a phone call while you're already on a call. And this super short article by Adam Silver shows you the steps he took to simplify this and make it understandable for users to know what to do. And as a spoiler, this is what he comes up with. So I think you'll agree. It's way, way clearer, way easier to understand. So these next 2 articles are from Matthew Ström, and these are again much longer, much more theoretical articles, but I absolutely love these. These were both published quite recently, within the last couple of months, and I actually printed both of them out and was reading them on my commute. And the first one is about color spaces and how to design a good color system. And I love this article because he goes back to first principles to really understand what colors are and how to make a good color palette based on this. I should say that Matthew is a design system designer for the team at Stripe, so he knows what he's talking about. So in this article, he starts by defining what would make a good color palette. And he gives us two suggestions. A good color palette should be useful, it should have utility, and it should be consistent. It should have consistency across all the colors. And with those, he then goes off on a journey to understand really what colors are. Like, why do we say that orange and yellow are more similar to each other than orange and green or blue and yellow? And through this, he goes into a deep dive on color spaces. And I learned loads on this about the lab color space, the LCH color space, and a newish one which he recommends called the OKHSL color space. Now, a color space is just a way of organizing colors, but it actually makes a really big difference because you'll see from this diagram that some colors at different hues have different perceived brightness levels. Anyway, if this sounds interesting to you, go read this article. I found it fascinating. The other article on his blog which I want to recommend is all about density. And again, he does a similar thing. He starts by setting out some definitions of what density is. He distinguishes between visual density, informational density, design density, which is like Gestalt principles, temporal density, which is how density changes over time, and then value density, which is how users get value from something. And basically, he wants to combat or maybe challenge this idea of things getting less dense or more simplistic. Last year, I made a video sort of on a similar topic, and I talked about how we're seeing more and more iOSification of software as Apple is merging iOS, iPadOS, and macOS to use similar interface elements. And that's resulting in a lack of density in desktop software, which actually isn't that good of a thing for power users. So I found this article super interesting to read, and I loved hearing his thoughts about it. Number 10 on this list is from the Co-op Experience Library. And again, this is a form design article. I would treat this as a reference. It gives you basic naming structures for the different elements of a form, and it explores how to design a form to have the best layout and hierarchy and how to group those elements together. And then the last article on this list is an article by a front-end developer called Hida, and he talks about the difference between dialogues, popovers, disclosure widgets, and overlays. These are all elements that have modality, and he just makes it super clear what all the different types of modality can be. So if you've got light modality, if you need to have an explicit modality, and he goes through when and where to use each of these things. It's quite a dense article, so it's definitely a really good reference article to come back to, and it's also maybe useful to know a bit of HTML and CSS before diving into this one. He also presented a talk which was a version of this article at a CSS conference and has put the slides from that online, and I actually found it slightly easier as there were a few more images and a few more diagrams. All of these articles kind of have a similar theme to them, and that is they all talk about definitions and giving names to things. As designers, we're so used to just throwing elements on a page, and why I really like articles which are a bit more theoretical like this, they give us the vocabulary to talk about things and analyze them and dissect them. And so I've got a lot of value from reading these. So if you've got the time, I'd really recommend going through all 11 articles. I think you'll find a lot of value in them too. Anyway, that's all from me. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this video useful, please do share it with a friend or just send the list of articles to a friend. I've linked them all in the description below this video. Just before I go, let me say I'm new to making YouTube videos, and it would really help me if you hit the subscribe button or share this channel with a friend who you think would also enjoy these videos. Doing either of those things would really help me as I try and grow this channel and teach more people how to become better designers. YouTube analytics shows me that most of the people watching these videos haven't yet hit subscribe. So if that's you, make sure you do it now. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.